Hi, everybody. It's Mama Kay coming back at you from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. And I'm thrilled to have this next person to talk with us today. It's another person in our Manitoba band community who has continued to be a huge contributor to the music community. Even though they're retired, they do a ton of work, both with the Manitoba Band Association, as well as with the different universities in helping prepare up-and-coming band teachers. So without further ado, special guest, who are you?
Hi, my name's Eric Marshall.
And Eric, what do you do right now? What is your current title?
Right, I call myself a repurposed music educator. So yeah, my wife and I technically retired from teaching 6.5 years ago, but since that time, we just leapt right back into doing other kinds of things, supporting the music education community. So that would include a whole lot of involvement in community music making, but we both work for Brandon University and University of Manitoba in supervising student teachers. And we're sessional instructors at University of Manitoba, teaching there. I adjudicate at music festivals and do clinics and guest conduct and those kinds of things. So generally fairly active in retirement, but it's a different kind of active. Yeah.
I dare say it sounds like you're busier now than you were when you were actually involved in the regular band world.
I like to think I am, but it's not true because I'm very aware of what the band world's like is if you're a public school teacher or teacher, just how many hours a day everybody's involved. And I just say I have the joy in retirement of doing things that I want to be doing and to say no to stuff as well and not feel like I have to get up every morning and do this and do that, do that. I think I say yes to too many things, but the kinds of things I've said yes to are the things that I wanted to do in retirement. So for instance, if I can, you know, I've always, I shouldn't say always, but I've played in the Winnipeg Wind Ensemble as a trumpet player for 28 years. And but when I retired, I started joining other ensembles. So I'm now a trumpet player in the West Side Jazz Band. I'm a trumpet player with the Mennonite Chamber Orchestra. So, you know, some jazz, some orchestra music. I continue to lead a church choir, have for, you know, about 15 years, and sing with the Mennonite, the CMU Mennonite Festival Chorus, which sings with the symphony all the time. And I'm the piano player in the Murray Riddell Big Band, and we do about 20 gigs a year at old folks' homes and seniors' residences. And, you know, those are things that I'm loving doing because it's still making music and interacting with people. That's sort of that side of it. The teaching side of it is like, yeah, opportunities that were unexpected came almost right after we were retiring. So I have taught the brass techniques class at U of M, and my wife and I still are on the teaching the course in the education faculty, teaching music in the early middle years course. We team teach that for U of M students, and of course the student teaching we mentioned. But yeah.
Well, you can tell that you're loving what you're doing because you're smiling when you're talking about it.
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah.
So
So right now, just right now, when there's not as much to do, it's like, oh, okay, you know, there's no rehearsals, there's no gigs. You know, in fact, on Saturday night was supposed to be the Manitoba Band Association provincial honor bands, and I was supposed to be conducting the intermediate honor band on Saturday night.
no.
Yeah, yeah, and it was just like, you know, it's still in my mind. I've got all that repertoire still perking head and stuff like that, but we haven't had a chance to meet with kids, and we're still hoping as an organization that we might have an event in the fall for all those students who were selected to that. And yeah, but it is what it is. Yeah.
So Eric, when you were teaching, where did you teach? Like, can you sort of give us a history of what your teaching career was? Don't go any further back than that because we'll circle back. But where did you teach in your teaching career?
Sure. I taught 8 years in Nova Scotia in a small town called Bridgewater. It was a rural community, and I started band program, music programs in that school. After 8 years, my wife is from Winnipeg, so we moved to Winnipeg, and I started teaching in the St. James Assiniboine School Division, Bruce Middle School, Sturgeon Creek, then Westwood Collegiate, Lincoln Middle School, and then the last 8 years as the coordinator for arts for the school division, responsible for all music education, dance, drama, and visual art. Yeah.
That's incredible. So it's almost like you were getting busier at the end of your career again to get you prepared for all the busyness in retirement. That's wild.
Yeah, and that's really true because there was a point in time when I was at Lincoln Middle School, which I absolutely loved and was really enjoying my jam there. It was just like really a good fit for me. And I thought, okay, this is it. I'm going to retire as a middle school band director. And then all kinds of things started changing. And as soon as I became the administrative side of it, that's when the network and the opportunities started changing. So I started to build relationships with universities and with colleagues in other divisions. So it was my world moved from sort of a fairly insular community within St. James to a provincial thing and then a national thing. So, in the last couple of years I was teaching, I was on the board for Canadian music educators, on the board for the Coalition for Music Education in Canada, and then of course involved with MMEA, the Manitoba Music Educators Group, the MBA, and the Association of Music Administrators in Manitoba, and the Arts Alliance in Manitoba. So those were things that when I retired, I started to ease myself out of and started to do more work with MBA. But yeah, it was wild how the last 10 years of my career just opened so many new doors for me.
So I'm so curious to go way back in time and find out what you were like as a kid as a music maker. So let's go way back to baby Eric. Can you give us what your musical journey was from even maybe before you started school up until you decided that you wanted to go into music as your career?
Sure. I came from a family that valued music, but my parents weren't musicians in that sense, but they would have had musical training as little kids, but it wasn't something that I recall growing up that they played instruments for us. They both played some piano, but it wasn't something that I would have seen growing up. But I certainly, with their support, my sister and I, were signed up for piano lessons, did some of that. And then just a connection with a really close friend who was starting to play in a community band. Now, this is all in Southern Ontario. So when I was, I'm trying to think how old, grade 7, which is about when most people start, I joined the Burlington Teen Tour Band, which was a really large marching band organization in Burlington, Ontario. And and picked up the trumpet. Actually, my first instrument was a horn that I bought for money, and I took a few lessons in their organization, and then just started doing things with them. And they were about 140-piece marching band. And the very first gig I ever did with them was a Grey Cup halftime show in
That was your first gig with them. That's incredible.
Yeah, first gig with them, 1970. This band traveled all over North America. So Rose Bowl Parade in Pasadena, California, Orange Bowl parades down in Florida, Quebec Winter Carnival in February, where it was -40 with the wind chill, at nighttime. It's a nighttime parade there, and we're out marching and doing all that stuff. And that was sort of where I kind of learned to play and the love for music. Interestingly enough, just as I was getting really hooked into that, my family moved to Cape Breton in Nova Scotia, but it was a career move with the large company he was with. And I ended up in Sydney, Nova Scotia, with no music in the school I was in. And completely lost all my friend network and the kind of people you associate with, so didn't know anybody. And my parents appropriately kind of made a bunch of phone calls and found out there was an Air Cadet band nearby. So joined the Air Cadet movement and began playing in their Air Cadet band there. This was high school age, so I was probably grade 9, grade 10. And interestingly enough, the director of that lived across the street from us in Sydney, and he was the high school band teacher in a very new beginning kind of program in New Waterford, Nova Scotia, which is a coal mining town. And he'd been there a couple of years, and we became very close, and he was leading this Air Cadet band. And about a year later, he moved into the attic of our house. We had a big
Holy
suite
how
up there.
perfect. That's incredible. Oh
Exactly.
my.
Yep. So he was a music educator, a band teacher. He was a very fine jazz pianist, and he lived in our house for 6 years, and was just an absolute mentor for me. He was named Terry Hill. He still lives in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia now, but he's obviously retired as well. And just did a huge amount of stuff. And through his influence and the things that he was involved in, by the time I was in grade 12, I think I was playing 11 rehearsals a week. And none of them were in a school setting because my own school had no music. So, that meant singing in a barbershop chorus, singing in a barbershop quartet, playing in a pretty high-end community jazz band, fourth trumpet, driving twice a week to his school, which was a 20-minute drive away for his after-school band practices. Before I had a license, my mom would drive me to those things, a Legion band, those kinds of things. So
you were really immersing yourself in the whole culture of band.
Yeah, and you know what? It was like we know with our own students, a lot of the things that we do for students is helping them in a social way and in a development way. So this was my lifeline. I didn't know people, but to build a new community, it all happened through music when we moved out to Cape Breton. And then it just kept escalating from there. So I was a strong student in school, and my folks always thought I'd go into business or math or something like that. And I just said, no, I think I really want to be, a band educator. I think the influence of my mentor, like happens with a lot, just wanted to kind of do that kind of stuff. So that was where that journey was. But up until this time, Joanne, you have to realize that I had still not really had a trumpet lesson ever. It was just all kind of immersed in this and some self-taught. So I had to do some auditions, and fortunately managed to get into a couple of universities, but chose to go to the University of Prince Edward Island in Charlottetown. Had some great experiences there, still stay connected to a lot of those people from there, and started working seriously on some trumpet chops. Shortening the story, spent a year at Queen's, and then the day I graduated, I had a job interview in Nova Scotia and was able to do that. And about 3 hours after graduating, I had a job offer for this job in Nova Scotia that I had for 8 years. So
when you graduated, was it 2 degrees? Was it 1? How did it work
Yeah, see, I'm so old that things were different then. The timeline where everything was weird and stuff. You could be creative and flexible. I have a Bachelor of Music degree from the University of Prince Edward Island. It's a major in education, but I do not have an education degree. Never did, never made it happen. And what happened was I had a 4-year degree, and I was thinking, oh, I really want to get out there and start teaching. I don't feel like I want to do the after degree that was called education. So I wrote to the Nova Scotia Department of Education, where I had a contact, and asked, what are the requirements to get a teaching license? And they said, well, this course, this kind of thing, a psychology, methods course, pedagogy courses, and then you need 300 hours of student teaching. And I asked, if I set up my own student teaching and have the principal and a cooperating teacher sign off on it, and maybe my provincial music consultant, this is the guy I was working with, he came and watched me, would that meet the requirement? And they said yes. So I phoned up my mentor, who we talked about, used to live in our attic, and said, can I come and do all this student teaching? And he said, sure, no problem. So I created my own student teaching thing. And again, it was in that scenario that, you know, I've been student teaching when the graduation ceremony started for university, and I got this job, and it was a brand new 1,000-student high school, hadn't even been opened yet, and
That's huge, 1,000 students.
yeah, and still under construction, and they'd never had a music program before.
So here
And
you are, Eric, just graduated, got your first gig in a school that doesn't have anything set up.
Right. No, nothing set up. They don't even know what they want. They just want a music program started. And they said, here's $250,000, buy what you need to get started. And my entire student teaching time was working with my mentor, planning what we needed to do to get this started and going.
What an incredible experience for you to have as, again, a brand new teacher coming in to learn all that, like just hitting the ground running.
Yeah, I was 21 years old, you know, and just, yeah, absolutely. And I made a ton of mistakes, and no one knows they were mistakes because they didn't know what it was supposed to look like.
What a perfect situation.
So I always say that I'm one of the last few first generation band directors out there, meaning there was nothing there when I walked in there when we started. We had to use our imagination and our creativity to build something from nothing. You know?
And so how many years were you there again, Eric?
I was there 8 years. In the middle of that 8 years, I took a year off and went to University of Western Ontario in London and pursued master's degree work, which is where I met my wife. But yeah, so but 8 years there, we did some amazing things, and it was really interesting. I love the place, you know, but it was, you know, time to do something different.
So what drew you to Manitoba?
That's where my wife is from.
Oh, right. Sorry, you did say that before.
Yeah. So, you know, we were married, and she lived in Nova Scotia for several years, and then we decided to relocate. But I'm also a 7-8 year man. So through my entire career, about every 7 years, I would change it up. I'd switch it to do something different. Whether that was change school or take a year off and travel, which we did 1 year, or, you know, just got into that administrative role as the coordinator of arts. You know, there was always those kind of 7-year intervals.
So what year did you land back in here? Or I shouldn't say back, but did you land here in Manitoba?
1986.
1986. I'm just trying to think about, yeah, so you were, I would say, yeah, you were one of the pioneers too of building a really, really strong Manitoba band community here.
Yes and no. I mean, certainly Manitoba band communities were started in the 60s. So some of them had been around for about 20 years. So the programs I was engaging with in St. James had all had several directors in front of me. But, you know, guys like, you know, Jim McKay and Orv Anderson and Art Buss and some of those names that percolate through our history, they would have been those first generation ones. That's why there's not very many Manitobans who can say they're first generation band directors. Because
right. They came up from the States, right?
That's correct. Yes, they did. They often came from the States or through the military, or sometimes even from you know, other parts of Canada, but yeah, most often through the States here in Manitoba.
Right. I would love for us to do a coffee table book of building Manitoba band to what it is, right? It's like to have everybody's stories actually written down. How cool would that be? Right here, here were the pioneers.
I think what was slightly different was in Nova Scotia, they were about 20 years behind. Maybe 15 years behind. So in that community, like there was really no school band programs within 100 miles of me when I started there.
But also then you could be innovative, right? As a new teacher, you weren't trying to be like, oh, I'm going to model my whatever after this. It's like, no, you were actually truly creating your own. You had one mentor, right? But it's like, it's not the same as now, right? Where everybody's looking up to these grand figures of the band community, right?
And don't forget, from my experience that I talked about, I never played in high school band.
Right.
It didn't exist.
Oh my goodness.
So all of my learning as a youngster was through community band experiences, this band gig, and whoa, you know, everything's wide open. I don't have all kinds of preconceived notions about what it should look like. So in those early years, and I was speaking about this with my student teachers in our cohort on our online meetings just a few weeks ago, you know, in that high school, I taught concert band and I had jazz band and I had a choir and I had a vocal jazz group, but I also had a course called Canadian Music Studies.
Oh,
And I had a course called Advanced Music Studies, which was all theory, analysis, arranging, and composition. And I taught with a guitar class, and I taught with a great English teacher a course called Literature Through Song.
wow.
You know, and things we're just doing to find interesting things to do for kids, and yeah. So I kind of saw myself as a broad-based music educator in Nova Scotia, and was quite surprised when I moved to Manitoba that I was labeled as a band teacher.
Yeah, there you have to here is the one
Yeah,
slot to fit into, right?
yeah, and I think probably I ended up being a band teacher, more than anything else. But I always kept some of those opportunities open. So it was really interesting through the rest of my career in Manitoba how we were able to start adding some of those other things into some of the programming I was involved in. Yeah.
So now, Eric, we've got to go possibly down a deep, dark path here. And
Okay.
remembering, of course, that it's a family show. Eric, what is perhaps one of the weirdest or strangest gigs or jobs that you have ever been involved in? I cannot wait to hear your answer on this.
Oh, this was the toughest question of all, Joanne, because I don't know if, like, I've been around so long, there's so many stories, and that's it. I just love telling the stories. There have been weird ones, like playing in a Dixieland band on a raft out in a river for a wedding, that was on somebody's lawn and stuff like that. We had to go out to there by boat, it was just weird that way. My school band played for Princess Di and Prince Charles because they were having a luncheon at the school I worked at, but we sat outside in the rain for 4 hours waiting for them to do all this stuff. And by the time they finally came out and we were playing for them, the bagpiper started, and it was just like absolutely chaotic. And it kind of a neat thing to say you did, but it was just one of those, oh, well, the hype leading up to it was way better than the actual event was, but because we were all soaking wet by the time it finished. Even that Quebec Winter Carnival gig was very memorable to me. I've got dozens, hundreds of them, of amazing music making experiences with kids. Sometimes when you're just absolutely overwhelmed by the emotional content of the music making or how the kids have just absolutely risen to a level you couldn't have expected and just made things work like that. I used to play in a bar band, and so there's a couple of stories that I won't share with you, but they're a little bit on the raw, edgier side about stuff that would happen while we were playing, the fight that broke out, or some of the things that were going on that we're standing there playing on stage, doing whatever and going, oh my gosh, that actually happened, but those kind of things. But the one story I do want to tell is, again, as a performing musician, because I've always valued myself, identified as a musician educator. I think sometimes in my life I've been an educator musician, the subtle difference between the two, but music making has been integral, central to this. So this is a story from a few years ago. I was playing with the Chester Brass Band, which is a village in Nova Scotia, but they had a huge amount of support for a British style brass band, cornets, and everybody read treble clef, and about 28 members. Very high-end band. People drove often up to 2 hours to get to their Monday night rehearsals for this band. But we received a significant grant from the village of Chester, which was a very affluent tourist destination. A lot of American and European tourists had very expensive summer homes there. And the gig that we had to do this 3 times every summer, but we had to play on their bandstand an evening gig with the group in order to qualify for the generous grant they gave us all the time. It was a gig that no one really liked because, it might be windy, it might be cool, there might be mosquitoes, all kinds of things would get in the way. So it was just like a must-do gig that was kind of boring. Our director, Gordon McGowan, used to play principal trombone with the London BBC Orchestra, and he had been heavily involved with the CD Maritime once he moved to Canada. So he was a very, very fine musician, but very stiff upper lip British approach to it. So the setting is we're at the bandstand, which is surrounded by a parking lot, but perched on top of a hill that overlooks the 2 sides of the Chester Harbor and the yacht clubs. So it's a beautiful setting. There's boats in the harbor, sailboats there. It's just absolutely gorgeous setting, and it's always an evening gig, sort of timed around sunset. But almost the whole audience is sitting in their cars or on the hoods of their cars. A few of them have blankets on the grass right near the bandstand, and we'd get 300 or 400 people there. And when they'd finished playing a song, everybody would honk their horn. So it wasn't kind of a normal game. But this is all the setup for this particular story, because what happened was one of these gigs and everybody's just going through the motions, and we're playing our final song, which was a very hymn-like arrangement. It was an arrangement of one of Mendelssohn's Song Without Words. It's an absolutely gorgeous piece of music, and we were just kind of playing through it, and our conductors indicated a phrase ending in a lift and a breath and then to move on to the next phrase. And I clearly remember the second trombone player missed the cue and played through the phrase and kind of messed it up a little bit. Well, that normally wouldn't have been such a big deal, especially in that bizarre, unmusical setting. But the conductor got pretty upset. His face turned red and he clamped down and said, "Oh, you guys, like you could see his brain saying, you better watch me because, that's what your job is. We need to do this." And then what he did, and this is hard to describe, but he took that piece of music, which we played in public, many times, and he stretched the phrases, and he pushed this way, and he pulled that way, and took us on a musical journey so that we would watch him that we had never done before. About halfway through the song, most of the band realizes we're doing something extraordinary. We are taking something familiar and humdrum and automatic, and we've turned it into something extraordinarily passionate and expressive and beautiful and unexpected. And the band is just soaring up through these phrases and just making so much music, and our conductor, usually extremely reserved, is just going, whoa, he's just pulling us along with this. And I look around, and the people across the band from me are starting to cry. And I'm starting to cry. And by the time we finish, 2/3, 3/4 of the band are weeping while they're playing. It's absolutely weeping, It's just like so overwhelming. You know, and there's nothing, it's not like we're playing at a funeral or anything like that. It's a beautiful setting, yes, but it's the music. We're overcome by this. We
And
finish,
all out of a mistake.
yep, all out of a mistake. But it's that thing about music, how the unexpected is where the passion can come from too, and how it's different. We finish the song, everybody honks their horns in the car, just and the band gets up and they're drying their eyes, and almost all of us are sort of gathered around the conductor and just saying how amazing it was. My wife, Sharon, was at that performance, sitting on the hood of a car like others were. And she came up to me and said, I don't know what you guys did, but that was so amazing. Because she had heard us many times and she felt what we felt too. So I
Oh,
said, it wasn't just on the stage, it was everywhere. And that was, I mean, that's not, I don't know if that's the kind of thing you're looking for, but that is top three of my musical experiences in my life. And I
oh,
tell that story.
my eyes are getting all glossy just thinking about it. Like what a moment. Oh, how, and you'll never forget that, right?
I absolutely never forget it. Yeah. Yeah. So
Oh,
that's my story.
it's Eric. That is a great story.
Yeah.
So now we've got to sort of go a different way with our
Yeah.
interview. Well, and we could tie it in though, right? Because I mean, people go into music because they love music and they're inspired to be music makers. So we have some students who watch these. Do you have any words of advice for anybody who's thinking about going into music as a career? I mean, you've inspired us all now with that story. We want to get together and make
That was
music
great.
again. But
Yeah.
especially you coming at it from the perspective of you working with these up and coming band teachers, right? What words of advice do you have of someone thinking about going into it?
Sure. The advice is really kind of simple. And some of it we've already talked about. And this is a great segue from what the story just was. Most important thing is you have to care. Now, what you care about is really important. So I think in my universe, we care about ourselves as people. We understand who we are and respect who we are. And we have to find ways to continue to nurture ourselves. But if we care about ourselves, then we can properly also care about others. So we care about the people near us. We can put that into any context in the world, but in our musical context, we think about the people we interact as teachers with. We care about them as young musicians, but we care about them as people as well. And so we care about ourselves, we care about the people around you, and we always put it through a framing through the lens of using music making as the tool to help us communicate and build those relationships. So I still think it's really important that we care about the music too. So care about ourselves, care about the people around us, our communities, about the music itself, and respect all of those things. Which means I think there's a balance that we always have to strike. So advice is be the best person you can be, and then be the best musician you can be. And I think we always have to find balance between that. And I think when we do, we can be successful in our world and successful as a music educator.
I mean, just think about your own story, right? Is how immersed you were
Mhm.
in the band world, and the fact that you surrounded yourself with people that were better than you, but you were also surrounded by that person who was kind and caring to mentor you.
Right, yeah,
Right,
indeed.
that's huge. And so I mean, I'm sure you take a lot of those characteristics forward,
Mhm.
right?
Well, I
um,
try to. Yeah.
yeah. So you said you never actually took any trumpet lessons before you auditioned. Do you say that perhaps people should be doing things like that in order to prepare to get into music as a career?
Right. So some of those fundamentals are really important. So a couple of things as a suggestion. Yeah, continue to work with mentors and or private teachers or your public, your school teacher to get the advanced training that you need. It's different than it was when I was trying to do this. You know, the
Right.
standard that's expected as you enter in means you have to go much higher. Two of my three kids are also music educators, so I'm very aware of how they had to prepare to get into university. But maybe I can do a very small plug for our If Me program. This is something run by the Manitoba Music Educators Association and the Association of Music Administrators in Manitoba. And If Me stands for the Initiative for Future Music Educators, IFFME. And it's a program we run where we invite interested high school students to come to our music conference in October, Tempo, the Manitoba Music Conference. And we have a stream set up for them that just talks about what they need to do, what it's like to be a music educator, what they need to do in high school, how they need to prepare themselves. It's open to grade 11 and 12 students. Last year we had 50 students involved in the program. And our times are a little bit bizarre now, so we're not absolutely promoting it yet, but probably in September, if we're back to a little bit more normal, we'll be sending a lot of information out. And hopefully high school students who are interested in music education as a career can come to our sessions and get some advice from some great educators who are part of that team that are reaching out to young people to get them interested and excited about music education.
I think it's a fantastic initiative that you guys have going. I can't believe there was 50 last year. Was that a new high for you guys?
Yes, indeed. We started with 12, and the second year we had around 20, and then the third year was 50, and we turned quite a few away. And we felt badly about that, but we didn't want to overwhelm our Tempo people, but we already have plans in place to how we can make it work. So
yeah, some of our rooms are a little small, right? They're classroom size, right?
they were. So we already have some plans if things go as we hope they will, where we can accept everybody into next year's If Me program. Yeah.
Great.
There's a bunch of people that you would know involved in that, Tyler Yip, and Jordan Laidlaw and Amanda Chiravelli are very involved with that. Evan Lee Armstrong's involved, myself. So it's just one of those things where we're trying to make sure we have sustainable music educators available to the students in Manitoba.
And what a great place for them to see what it's really all about. I mean, we all love going to that day. Tempo is one of our favorite days of the entire year. I don't know any other sage group that has such passionate people on that day, right? I mean, we go to connect with people, we go to learn. It's a true beautiful event that happens every year, and I know I look forward to it all the time, and I come out feeling rejuvenated.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
very good.
So Eric, these are weird times indeed. Do you have any last bits of worldly advice as to how you're getting through all of this strangeness?
I mean, we'll all get through somehow or other. I mean, sometimes it feels like it's day by day. Sometimes the projects that we take on, help move us forward. So like I said, the things we're doing in our home, but working with the student teachers was a real blessing. They were so amazing as they did that. Even just, trying to stay connected with the people who are important, which is why I want to do a big thank you, Joanne, for these kinds of things, your YouTube channel and these interviews. It's really getting to know a lot of people, and the webinars and the Zoom meetings that people are happening. It's pretty amazing. I know you and I have been in several meetings together because you're not just a school band teacher, you're also involved in some of our provincial activities as well. So yeah, we're just going to plug on and move forward and go from there. Yeah.
Well, and of course, you and I was talking to Don Horbis the other day, you are also a lover of the cruise. So you could think forward and be planning your next cruise. I can't believe that you snuck in all that cruising before this all hit the fan.
Yeah, we had a whole lot of cruising activity in late December and January, and spent, trying to think, what was it, 21 days on the water, something like that. Yeah, it was lovely. And we're back. Yeah, back safe by February. I'm so sorry when your own cruise had to be canceled. But I gotta say how much I loved your cruise postings from your living room or your van. They
You
were
know what?
hilarious.
I still have, I'm not going to reveal it now, but I've been working on a ship.
Oh, okay.
I brought home a trombone box
Yeah, yeah.
and I've created my own virtual ship, but that's for another day.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, that's good.
Eric, it has been so wonderful to talk to you. Thank you again for agreeing to be a part of this series. It's, you know what, it has been, it's been great to feel that I have this purpose, this project, right? I look forward to it every day. Who do I get to talk to? Who do I get to connect with? And then who do I get to share it with?
Yeah.
Right? It really helps me a lot. So it's been a fantastic time talking to you, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day and find some joy in the things that you're going through in your house, trying to get ready for your next adventure.
Thanks so much, Joanne. You're terrific. Thanks. Keep doing this kind of stuff. It's amazing. Well done.
Thanks, Eric. All the best to you.
All right.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.